Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall might seem like the biggest rivalry of heavyweights right now, but potentially Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou was way bigger than that. On one side was Jon Bones Jones, a tactical genius with an undefeated legacy at light heavyweight. On the other stood Francis Ngannou, a terrifying knockout artist who rose from the sand mines of Cameroon to become the baddest man walking on the planet. For 4 years, fans waited for this matchup, but every time discussions were held, something happened and the fight remained a dream. But how did their rivalry begin? Well, it all started in 2020 when two-time light heavyweight champion Jon Jones decided to vacate his title and move to the heavyweight division. Bones' plan was simple. He had been ruling the light heavyweight division for nearly half a decade. He had fought and beaten the biggest names of the division. Whether it was Daniel Cormier, Rashad Evans, or Dominic Reyes, he managed to outclass everybody. Honestly, once he reached his prime, there was no one that could challenge him in his division. For Jones, fighting these guys was just another day at the office. Not just him, but fans were bored too. Seeing this humongous 6'4" guy finishing his peasant opponents within the first rounds wasn't giving them a kick. They wanted to witness Bones in neck-to-neck fights. On top of that, Jones was physically outgrowing the division. By mid-2020, he weighed around 230 pounds, so cutting down to 205 pounds was harder than bulking up to prepare for heavyweight titans. His fight IQ and technicality were unparalleled, but to face heavyweights, you don't just need that. Bones needed to add significant muscle mass to compete with heavier and stronger opponents. But there was a challenge. At 6 feet 4 inches with an 84.5-inch reach, he had a frame suited for heavyweight, but bulking up 40 to 50 pounds risked slowing him down. That would eventually raise his chances of underperforming despite having a great shape. So he had to step back from fighting and focus on muscular endurance. Rather than just gaining extra pounds, he was lifting 500 pounds for sets of 8 or 10. He was running long hours. Overall, if UFC held a CrossFit-style event for all the heavyweight fighters on its roster, Bones would have won it. While Jon Jones was away from the spotlight, training hard for his move to heavyweight, Francis Ngannou was making noise as one of the scariest fighters in the UFC. By the time Jones gave back his light heavyweight belt in 2020, Ngannou had already established himself as one of the top contenders in the heavyweight division. He had built massive momentum with 4 brutal first-round knockouts over Curtis Blaydes, Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Ngannou's back-to-back wins and one punch power had made it clear that he's the #1 contender for the heavyweight belt. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Jones' soft transit to heavyweight and Ngannou beating every top fighter in the division got fans buzzing. They started speculating. What would happen if an unstoppable force faced off an immovable object? And it wasn't just fans hyping it up. Both fighters started fueling the fire, while Jones was already known for his trash talk and triggering others. Ngannou came forward and said he'd be interested in fighting Bones. They even had a Twitter beef which hooked fans to their fight. Following that, UFC did attempt to explore the possibility of booking Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. Dana White confirmed that discussions took place, but the negotiations quickly fell apart due to financial disagreements. Jones wanted to be paid appropriately for a move to heavyweight, especially to face a dangerous opponent like Ngannou. He claimed the UFC was unwilling to offer what he considered fair compensation. There was another issue. Jones hadn't yet hit his ideal heavyweight weight and the matchmakers felt he wasn't ready. With no deal reached, the fight was shelved. Both fighters kept doing their thing. Jones kept training and even hinted he wouldn't be back for at least a year. Meanwhile, Ngannou kept pushing for the title fight. Finally, on March 27, 2021 at UFC 260, Ngannou got his shot against Stipe Miocic, the division's winningest champ. Within the first minute of round 2, Ngannou knocked Miocic out cold and became the UFC heavyweight champion. Once again, Bones teased a fight, asking the UFC to show him the money, but Dana White had understood that Jones is doing all these things to stay relevant.
You can say you want to fight somebody, but do you really want to?
Bones didn't seem serious in fighting Ngannou because after all, he was the world's #1 heavyweight and Jones was still in preparation to make a debut in heavyweights. Even with all the fan hype and Jones's teasing tweets, Ngannou didn't ask for the fight.
Now I'm the champ. I don't think about contender. Contender think about me because I'm the champ.
It is clear the fight wasn't happening. So for the next year, Bones remained busy with his training and legal issues, including domestic violence charges, while Ngannou rose to the top. His title win was huge. A black guy who grew up working in sand mines in Cameroon became a global star, known as the Predator, One Punch Power, and the baddest man on the planet, and for a while, he lived up to every name. In January 2022 at UFC 270, he faced Cyril Gane, a fast striker with an 11-0 record. Despite a bad knee injury, Ngannou surprised everyone by taking Gane down and controlling him to win a unanimous decision. This showed he wasn't just a knockout artist but a smart fighter, making fans even more excited for a potential Jones fight. And then something unexpected happened. Contract talks between Ngannou and the UFC stalled. He wanted better pay, health insurance, and the freedom to box, and the UFC didn't agree to any. It looked like the Predator was ducking UFC. And finally, in January 2023, Ngannou left the UFC and joined PFL. Maybe it was just bad timing, or maybe the stars really didn't align, because almost as soon as Ngannou left, Jon Jones made a comeback. In March 2023, Jones faced Cyril Gane for the vacant UFC heavyweight title. He won via submission in round 1 and became a 2-division champion. This fight marked his official transition from light heavyweight to heavyweight after years of preparation. A few months after this win, he made an entry at a PFL event where Ngannou and Jones had an intense stare-down. Their beef escalated the speculations of a potential fight. But this time, the tables had turned to 180 degrees. Previously in 2021, Ngannou was champ and Jones was asking for a fight. Now Jones held the belt and Ngannou was on the outside trying to find a way back in. Ngannou desperately tweeted, gave interviews, and even said,
"That has always been the #1 fight that I've been asking for the last 3 years. Whether it was before Stipe or after Stipe or after Gunn, I've been asking for Jon Jones."
He even stated that this was the only fight I've always asked for. If I was given a chance, I can fight Jon Jones twice a month. Ngannou's position was clear. He wanted a UFC and PFL co-promotion. That's why he was reigniting the most high-stakes fight speculations. However, Dana White was adamantly against his return to UFC. At a UFC 285 weigh-in scrum, White said, "Ngannou will never be in the UFC again. We tried for years. It's over." So, if the fight had actually happened, who would have won? On one side, Jon Jones, a technical genius with 84.5-inch reach, elite wrestling, unorthodox striking, and a scary fight IQ. He dominated Cyril Gane in just over 2 minutes with a guillotine choke, proving his skills work at heavyweight. On the other, Francis Ngannou, a freak of nature with world record punching power and 12 KOs in 17 wins. He doesn't need rounds, he just needs one shot. That's why this matchup split the MMA world. In an interview, Dana White said Jon Jones would have beaten Ngannou exactly like he did Cyril Gane at UFC 285. Randy Couture called it a 50-50 fight. He insisted Jones to step up and fight the big guys. In his opinion, Ngannou could score an early knockout, but if it went long, Jones would grind him out. Chael Sonnen was more direct, claiming Ngannou ducked UFC and Jon Jones. Jones left the belt and moved to heavyweight just to fight the Predator, and when everything looked aligned, he stepped back, leaving the UFC. If the fight had happened, Jones would win 9 out of 10 times due to his range control and grappling, while Joe Rogan described it as the ultimate test because if Jones took it to the ground, it was over.
Then the uncertainty about moving up into heavyweight, like how's he going to deal with guys like Francis, which was always the big fight. That was the big fight.
Due to his recent performances and upcoming fight against Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones is fans' favorite. And with his technique, cardio, and championship experience, Jones has a 70 to 80% chance of finishing Francis Ngannou. Anyways, that's just my analysis. If you want more of these videos, consider subscribing.